All right. So if you someone with a beard and the hard hat walking towards your house, walk the boars. Nothing good is going to transpire out to that. So we're in a series called The Art of Bouncing Back, where we're walking with the apocryphal and we're talking about how do you bounce back from when life's kind of knocked you down. And I want to start with that with kind of a fun question. What was a vacation that you took that didn't meet your expectation? A vacation that you recently took or that you've taken that didn't meet your expectation. Take a moment and share it with someone next to you. And if you are watching online, put it in the comment. You'd love give me just a moment. You're allowed to talk in church. All right. Well, I would love to give you mine. So, my wife and I had only been married for about a month and a half, and we had just got back from Italy on our honeymoon, and we moved to Nebraska. I was already living there. She joined me, and we had a weekend off. We're like, well, we should go do something. And someone said, you should go to Chimney Rock. Have you ever been to Chimney Rock? It's more like a sum, but we'll get to that. So as we're going, we get a tent because we can't afford anything at this point. We're newlywed. And we drive not just miles, but like 4 hours to get to this lake. Didn't realize it was that far. So we're driving and, like the passenger princess that my wife is, she falls asleep on the drive. And so I'm talking to myself the entire time. And as we get there, it's dark, it's late, the sun down, and you can't really see this thing because it's not lit up. They typically have lights that uplight it to make it look real pretty at night, but it wasn't working. So we get there and we ask, where is our plot? And you got all these nice campers. They're like, well, the tent section's out. Okay. So we park our car, we get there, and we didn't realize it was kind of like high deserty. So it could be like 90 during the day, but 40 at night. And we were woefully underprepared. So we're in our sleeping bags, we're in our air mattress that's kind of leaking air, and you're leaning around and you're finding rock at every juncture. And in the middle of the night, we realize it's freezing in this tent. So we put our sleeping bags together and make like a giant hot pocket for us to be inside, and we're just freezing. Then all of a sudden, the ground starts to shake. And we start hearing loud noises, and we start hearing, yeah, yeah. What the person neglected to tell us was this was also a ranch. And so in the middle of trying to sleep, a cattle drive was going by and people on four-wheelers were going around us. And so I pop my head out and I look out and go, well, this is how we die. Go back in. I'm like, they're not even going to be able to tell us who's the body. So we don't sleep. It's not great. We get up and we see this structure. And as you get closer, it's less impressive than it looks. And I'm like, it's like a farm in the middle of nowhere. Is that it? You ever had one of those moments, is that it? There's moments in life where we have those moments where it's like, is this it? Is it all that there is? You go movie, you get the popcorn, you see you sit down, you're watching the movie, and you realize showed all the good stuff in the commercial. This is right. You get a new job. You were excited. You were expecting. You can't wait. You start your first day, and then that coworker. You know who I'm talking about. A name's coming to mind, and all of a sudden you're sitting there, and the excitement kind of disappeared. And you're like, "Is that it?" You buy your first house. You're a homeowner and no longer renting it long to you. And as you're getting married, you realize that maybe your inspector was the beard guy with the yellow hat and the roof needs reput. You have termite there. There's a leak under the sink. Your cabin water smells a little funky. I don't know any of it by experience. And you sit there and you go, huh, is this it? Why does that happen? Why do we go from excitement to so quickly? I think it's because the longer we live, the more we realize this truth. Life has a way of not going the way it should go, or we want it to go. Yeah, lots of good that happens in our life.
A lot of hardship right alongside it. Our loved ones get sick. Our kids struggle with identity, jobs, anxiety, maybe even the future. The version of life that we imagined growing up, and they were like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like, I want to be an artist. I want to be a painter. And then you realize that like the colors, where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 for coloring in the lines, you can't even do that. Not speaking from experience. And you find out that, your bills go up, but your income kind of stays the same. The dream jobs that you wanted kind of goes to someone else less qualified. People we love go through things that we can't fix. Plans fall through, things break, relationship shifts, and the world changes. And over time, dissatisfaction kind of sinks in. And it's not because we're pessimistic, but it's because we've lived long enough to know that this is just how life works. Is this it? And often it's not about the glass being half full or even half empty. It's about sometimes you don't even get to hold the glass. You don't get to choose what type of water is in it. It just happens to you. The water rises and falls because of forces that are beyond your control. Deep dissatisfaction sinks in. Trust me, the sermon gets better. I promise. You're probably sitting there going, oh, this is a great day to go to church. Go to IHOP instead. But this is something that we deal with in our American culture. Something gets really, really good, and then all of a sudden, something changes. Something happens. There's a kink in our plans, and all of a sudden, dissatisfaction comes in. Why is that? The truth is, it's nothing new. And this is something Paul dealt with. In 2 Corinthians 1:8, it says this, we don't want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life even itself. That is the prayer of every parent who's dealing with a kid that has had the norovirus. We despaired of life even itself. So this brings us to Paul. Paul wrote 2 letters that we have to the Corinthians. He may have written more. There's signs that he probably did, but we have 2. And it shows that in his time, it was difficult there. And in general, Paul lived in a very difficult life. He went from being the persecutor of the church to being persecuted for the church. And there's some reasons why he wrote this letter, specifically 2 Corinthians. There were super apostles that were undermining him as a leader. He was long gone, and they come in and started saying, well, what are his credentials? He's kind of homegrown. He doesn't speak very eloquently. He doesn't have a big YouTube channel. He doesn't have a lot of followers. He's kind of boring. He can't really hold a candle up to Joel Osteen. Have you seen his church? He's not that impressive. They also cared more about their upward mobility. It was all about their place in life. Corinth was a bustling city, and it was all about where can I get ahead? What can I do to get ahead? I'll do anything to get ahead. Sound familiar? And then Jesus was not as central. Jesus kind of took a tertiary space and moved to the outside. Reconciliation, when people would get into fights and disputes, started to not be of such a high value. It didn't quite matter, because if you can just get ahead by any means necessary, it doesn't matter. You don't have to reconcile. You can just go over here and start your own church. You can go over here and do whatever you want. And then lastly, and probably the biggest one that we're going to talk about today, their Christian hope was uncertain. Why follow Jesus? Life is already hard, and following Jesus is hard. We talk about it being easy, but it's not. And so they were wondering, is this it? This all that is going on? And Paul poured himself into this community for 18 months. Acts says this, so Paul stayed in Corinth for 1.5 years, teaching them the word of God. He preached his heart out. He built deep relationships. And then he left, and everything unraveled. In his time away, different voices came in, changed opinions, changed views of Jesus. They changed moral and what does it mean to do right work. They reframed Christian hope, casting doubt on Paul's credentials and credibility, and adding disruption to the entire community. Have you ever done good work, and then you stepped away, and the narrative completely changed? It's the story of a pastor who steps away from the pulpit because it's time to retire. They move on because their work is done. And as they step away, new leadership comes in. And in order to get some cheap victories, they blame the prevailing issues on the other leadership. They spin rumors, they scapegoat, and all of a sudden, years of good service is now masked by a new story, a fake story. You know, it's absolutely painful when a story you lived with integrity is rewritten by someone who wasn't even there. When your years of sacrifice get buried under someone else's agenda. This puts us right in the feet of Paul. He was there. He did good work. And he is being undermined at every corner. And so he's writing 2 Corinthians. He is not writing with a smile. He is writing through anguish and tears and frustrations. And I imagine he's marking things out. It's like, I can't send that. We've all been there. And in the passage, he asks these two questions. Do our bodies and this world still matter? Do what we do with our bodies matter? Or are we just waiting to escape this hellhole? And then, is following Jesus worth it, even when it's so hard and costly? Because the truth is, the Christian life, it is tough. Be kind to those who are not kind to you. Work for peace and justice, even when injustice continues and peace seems absent. Turn the other cheek. Go the extra mile. When someone takes your cloak, give them your tunic as well. Forgive. Jesus' teachings on the Sermon on the Mount gives us a picture into the kingdom life activity, and it's hard. Why follow that Jesus? Is it simply to avoid hell? For some, that might be a good reason. Maybe it's the teachings that you were brought up with. Maybe you were scared into following Jesus. But fear isn't a good enough reason. It mars our relationship with Jesus. So why follow Jesus? What is our hope? Is it heaven? What even is heaven? What is the Christian hope? And what does Paul mean when he says this? For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due for us, the things done while in our body, whether good or bad. I'm not going to bury the lead here. The reason for the Christian hope for the Corinthians back then is the same for us today. And this is the reason for our hope. Every act of goodness, every act of mercy, every act of kindness is never wasted, and it echoes into the world to come. Every piece of good, every time you hold on, every act of courage echoes into eternity. What we do in the here and now is never in vain. A book that helped to reframe this for me a couple years ago was this book, Surprised by Hope by N.T. Wright. Our women's ministry are going to be doing a study on heaven this summer. I encourage you to maybe pick up this book in conjunction with that. The first book that the women will be doing is more devotional. This one's more deeper theological hermeneutics of what does it mean to actually have Christian hope. And in this book, he puts something, and it has stuck with me, and he says this: what you do in the Lord is not in vain. You're not oiling the wheels of a machine that's about to roll off a cliff. You are not restoring a great painting that's shortly going to be thrown into the fire. You're not planting roses in a garden that's about to be dug up for a building site. You are accomplishing something that will become in due course a part of God's new world. What we are participating isn't in vain. One day, all things will be made right, and we are given peace, power, and perseverance in the now to do what God has called us to do, because what's on the horizon, resurrection, is on its way. But what is on the horizon? What is our Christian hope? How do we live with the end in mind to be able to bounce back with the things that are happening in our lives today? The first thing is simply this: heaven is not the end goal. We've all heard the songs. This world is not my home, I'm just a traveling through. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away. In the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. A lot of us grew up thinking that the goal of faith was pretty simple. We die, and then we go to heaven forever. right? But Paul paints a better picture. He says this: to be away from the body is to be at home with the Lord. But it's not the end of the story. Paul also in Romans talks about that we're groaning. We know the world isn't as it should be. But not just we're groaning, but all of creation is groaning and longing for restoration. It's longing for restoration because God's not going to destroy creation. God's going to redeem, renew, and restore it. Just as God isn't about destroying you, he's about redeeming, renewing, and restoring you instead. Heaven is important, but it's not the end of the world. God's goal isn't evacuation, it's restoration. It's where heaven and earth is reunited. So yes, our loved ones are with Jesus, but the resurrection, what happened to Jesus, is still on the horizon. And new creation, wholeness is coming. And it's about resurrection, not escape. The Christian hope isn't about being taken out of the world. It's about being remade in the world. We don't wait to taste the beauty of what God has for us until we close our eyes to this life. We experience it in the here and now. Jesus wasn't raised as a ghost. He was flesh. He was human. He ate fish. He had scars. He walked. He talked. He was embraced. His resurrection wasn't a getaway. It was a renewal. Paul puts it this way: we do not wish to be unclothed, but instead clothed with our heavenly dwelling. In other words, we don't want to float off. We want to be made whole. Christianity isn't about life after death. It's about life after death. Meaning, when we close our eyes to this life, that's not the end of the story. What happened to Jesus on that resurrection morning will happen to each and every one of us as well. The aches and pains of today and yesterday will be no more. The tears, the frustrations, the injustice. One day, God will make all things right. And death, that has been the enemy for so long, that has swallowed up so much that we love, itself will be swallowed up. No more pain, no more tears, no more suffering. Not floating in the clouds singing kumbaya, but a real lived experience that you can touch, that you can feel, that you can taste, that you can experience. We are with Jesus when we die. But then comes the day when the dead are raised and all things are made new, including us. Because of that, the resurrection shapes our mission. If resurrection is where our story is headed, then everything we do now matters. We're not just waiting for heaven, we're working towards renewal. Paul puts it this way in 1 Corinthians 15:58. Nothing you do in the Lord is in vain, which means that every act of love, every diaper change, every late night prayer, every hard conversation, every protest for justice, every shared meal, none of it is wasted, because resurrection means that God is keeping score in a world that often doesn't. We are signposts of what's coming. We plant trees. We build hospitals. We invest in places like Cherish Watoto because it matters, because people matter. We are signposts of what's to come. And because of that, our hope, it's not passive. Hope doesn't sit back. Instead, hope steps in. Paul says we make it our aim to please him. That's not someone who's hanging on by a thread saying, well, it doesn't matter. The world isn't as it should be, so I'm just going to step back and wait until Jesus takes me home. Some of us were raised to think that our job was to sit on a roof and wait for the rapture. Paul says, no. You don't run from the fire, you walk into it with water. People of resurrection roll up their sleeves. They step into spaces and they bring healing. They forgive, and hope shows up when it's inconvenient. And Paul says that our hope reframes the end. Christian hope isn't about destruction, it's about renewal. One of my favorite verses that I say at all funerals is Revelation 21. See, I am making all things new. Are we living like that's true? That God actually is making all things new? Are we living as resurrection people? Because the resurrection changes everything. Because the resurrection isn't just what happened to Jesus, it's what's coming for us. And it gives us meaning and urgency and beauty in how we live right now. Yes, we are saved by grace through faith. It is God who draws us to himself, who saves us, sets us free, and sends us out to do good, to resist evil, to drive a spoke in the wheels of injustice, to bandage the wounds of our neighbor. Because every act of goodness and kindness, it echoes into the future that's to come. It means your labor is not in vain. The diaper changes, that coworker, the grief, the caregiving, the forgiveness, it all matters. Because this world isn't disposable. It's being renewed. And you are part of that renewal. We have good friends, Crystal and Trevor Bowen. They served with us when we were in Oregon. Crystal and Trevor have 3 kids of their own. Crystal was on staff working in the kids ministry, and Trevor was the worship pastor. He has a great story. He's been the worship pastor there for like 20 years. Don't really hear of that. Well, they started to get into foster care and had a young girl come into their life for respite care. This girl came from a trauma-filled home. It was very, very difficult. And every time they would bring her in and they would go to the visits with the family, it caused chaos in their own home. For them, for their kids, but yet they still loved. They still showed up, even when it was painful to them. About 6 years ago to this day, she was removed. They didn't have a say in it. They had all these memories of everything that they've done to do what they could. And I remember it was a Sunday. We had 2 services on a Sunday. Trevor's not in a place to worship, let alone lead worship. And in between services, he steps out. And I happen to be outside because our middle school ministry is in another building. And we sit there and we embrace and we just weep. This isn't how it should be. This isn't how it should be. This is unfair. She's being taken away from me. We have no say in this. She came into our life unexpected. Something that was meant to just be a weekend turned into 2 years. And now she's gone. And as we talked, and we prayed, and we cried, he said these words. She was entrusted with me for a time. We did what God called us to do. We loved, we cared, not knowing how much it even mattered. But in the economy of God's kingdom, nothing goes to waste. The person you're praying for, the kid you're praying for, your friend, that spouse that you're watching deteriorate with their diagnosis, the frustrations, the understanding of not knowing what the future holds, everything you do in the here and now it's not going to go to waste. It's at this point in this sermon where I typically say, hey, here are the 3 next steps. There are no next steps. It's simply this. You're not oiling the gears of a doomed machine. You're not restoring a painting that's going to be tossed into the fire. You're not painting roses in a garden that's about to be bulldozed over. What you're doing is you're planting seeds of the kingdom. And you are a living representation of God's kingdom breaking in the here and now. Every act of goodness, mercy, and kindness, it is not wasted. Because everything you do here in this body, in the time that we're given, it echoes into the world that's to come. It's not in vain. Even when you feel like it's in vain, God is going to bring something beautiful from it. Every act of goodness, mercy, and kindness, it's not wasted. It echoes into the world that is to come. Let's pray. Lord, there's days I don't believe that, and I don't feel that it's true. And today, my prayer for this congregation, for myself, for those watching online is, Lord, give us the faith to know that that's true. We don't know what tomorrow holds, but God, we do know that you are the one that holds tomorrow. You are known, and you care about us deeply. The way to bounce back is living with the end in mind. The things we do with our hands, with our hearts, with our words, with our bodies, they matter. It's not in vain. We're not restoring a painting just for it to be caught on fire. Lord, you are going to see it through. So, Lord, give us the strength, the courage to keep moving forward. In your name we pray. Amen.